was just the new baggage guy, gray-haired, quiet, ignored, until the senior mechanic humiliated him in front of everyone. What no one knew, the rookie once saved hundreds of lives, and now he's about to do it again. Welcome back, dear friends. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone once judged you by your uniform instead of your story, this one's for you. Today's tale takes us to the bustling floor of an airport, where an old man starts a humble new job and ends up teaching everyone around him a lesson in dignity, courage, and truth. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your own stories in the comments. You never know whose heart you might touch. Charlotte Douglas International Airport was waking up under a cloudy morning sky, the kind that turns the runway into a sheet of grey steel. The air was thick with the smell of jet fuel, the distant hum of turbines, and the rhythmic clatter of baggage carts being hauled across the tarmac. Inside, just past gate B14, stood a man who looked a little too dignified to be holding a neon orange baggage vest. His name was Luke Thompson, 62. Tall, with broad shoulders that had carried both aircraft engines and family burdens. His silver hair was combed neatly to the side, and his hands, though now calloused from time away from his old profession, still moved with deliberate care, like they remembered blueprints and bolts from another life. He looked like someone starting over. Luke adjusted his vest, trying not to seem too nervous. Around him, younger handlers moved quickly, chatting, laughing, tossing bags into carts with mechanical ease. But Luke moved slower, more measured. He was new, not just to the job, but to this version of himself. He was once an aeronautical engineer, a good one. He helped build things that flew through storms. Now he was here, stacking luggage. And he was okay with that. Life had shifted. Bills needed paying. Pride had long since been repurposed into survival. "Hey, rookie," a voice sliced through the morning buzz. "You polish those boots for inspection or because you miss boot camp?" Luke turned. The man speaking was older, maybe mid-60s, with a wiry build and a voice like gravel. Carl Jennings. His maintenance jumpsuit bore the insignia of 20 years of service, and the bitterness of someone who thought he'd seen it all. Around his neck hung an old airport ID, the kind only the most senior staff still used, as if clinging to relevance. Luke smiled politely, extending a hand. "Luke Thompson, first day." Carl didn't take the hand. Instead, he looked him up and down, then chuckled loudly enough for the others to hear. 62 and working the ramp? They must be hiring out of the nursing home now." A few nearby handlers laughed awkwardly. One younger man shifted uncomfortably and gave Luke an apologetic glance. Luke let his hand drop. "Just here to do my job." Carl smirked. "We'll see if you last a week, rookie. Luggage is heavier than blueprints." He walked off, leaving Luke standing in the draft of his words. Luke inhaled slowly and turned back to the task at hand. Flight 112 from Atlanta was pulling in. Time to work. No room for ego. Not today. As he moved toward the baggage cart, the ground beneath his feet seemed to whisper with every step, reminders of who he used to be and the man he was now becoming. He loaded the first set of bags with the same quiet focus he once gave to pre-flight safety checks. One suitcase had a tag reading T. Martinez, Army. He paused, straightened the tag gently, then placed the bag with extra care. Across the tarmac, Carl watched. His lip curled. The morning rolled on, and Luke kept his head down. But whispers had already started. Carl's mockery spreading through the crew like spilled jet fuel. Words like grandpa and desk job dropout floated around the break room. Luke heard them. He just chose not to answer. But deep inside, something stirred. He had survived storms before, literal and metaphorical. This was just another runway, another takeoff waiting to happen. And somewhere far beyond the clouds, life still waited to prove him right. Lunch break came late at gate B14. The kind of late that turns lukewarm coffee into a blessing. Luke sat on the edge of a metal bench just outside the staff entrance, the buzz of aircraft turbines humming behind him like a memory that never quite left. He took a bite from a cold turkey sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Not bad, not good, just fuel. Much like everything else lately. Fuel to keep moving. Mind if I sit? The voice belonged to Rosa Alvarez, a janitor in her early 70s with sharp brown eyes and a kind, unassuming face. She wore a navy blue jumpsuit and sneakers that had seen better days, but her posture was proud. Like Luke, she carried years of stories behind a quiet smile. "Not at all," Luke replied, shifting over. He noticed her tray, 2 boiled eggs, a banana, and a thermos. Simple, sufficient. They ate in silence for a few moments, the kind of silence that speaks comfort rather than awkwardness. "You handle the bags like you used to handle engines," Rosa said finally, cracking one of the eggs. Luke's brow lifted. "You noticed." "I notice everything," she said, not smiling but not unfriendly either, especially when someone pretends this is their first time near a plane. He gave a quiet laugh. "Yeah. Old habits die hard." Rosa looked at him carefully. "I've worked here 27 years, and I've seen 2 kinds of men come through this airport. Those who think they're better than the job, and those who've been humbled enough to do it with honor. You seem like the second kind." Luke looked down, folding the wax paper slowly. "I used to be an engineer, aviation systems. I worked with Delta for almost 18 years. After the merger, I was cut. Then life happened. Savings gone. Wife passed. House sold. I needed something. Anything." Rosa nodded solemnly. "Sorry about your wife." Luke gave a small nod. "She always said I'd find peace with my hands. Guess I am, in a way." Rosa leaned back slightly. "Luke Thompson," she murmured, as if tasting the name. "Wait. You weren't the one involved in that thing with the LAX emergency landing back in '09? He blinked. "You remember that?" Everyone in the maintenance wing was talking about it. An engineer caught a hairline crack in the wing bracket of a 757. They grounded the plane minutes before boarding. Could have saved over 100 lives. Luke looked away. "Wasn't just me. A whole team worked the inspection. But it was you who flagged it, right?" He said nothing, just took a long sip from his water bottle. Rosa reached into her coat and pulled out a small, worn newspaper clipping. "I keep this, not because I knew you, but because my cousin was supposed to be on that flight. She missed it because of a migraine. When she heard what almost happened, she sent me this article, told me someone out there saved her life without even knowing." Luke stared at the yellowed paper. His name was there, in tiny print beneath a photo of the aircraft being towed off the runway. "She's in Arizona now," Rosa continued, "still calls that day her rebirth day." Luke felt something shift in his chest, gratitude, grief, a pinch of disbelief. "I don't carry that article to flatter people," Rosa said, her voice steady. "I carry it to remember that everyone has a story behind their silence." Suddenly, a commotion erupted by the cargo ramp. Carl's voice cut through the air like a saw. "Hey, rookie, you want to explain why that container's 5 inches off alignment?" Luke stood. He hadn't touched that cart in over an hour. By the time he got there, a small group had gathered. Carl pointed at a misaligned crate with feigned outrage. "You trying to cause a shift mid-flight?" Carl barked. "This ain't a retirement home shuffleboard game." Luke looked at the crate, then at Carl. "I didn't move that one." "Sure you didn't," Carl sneered. "Next you'll say the jet moved it itself." Luke's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The younger workers stayed quiet, unsure whose side to take. Rosa arrived just in time to hear it all. She stepped forward, slow but firm. "That crate was fine an hour ago," she said, crossing her arms. "I was cleaning in this area. Saw him walk past it twice, never touched it." Carl scoffed. "What are you, his lawyer now?" "No," Rosa said calmly. just someone who knows the difference between a mistake and a setup. And the silence that followed hit harder than any shout. Carl turned and walked off without another word, but not before Luke saw something in his eyes. Panic, shame, fear. Whatever it was just beginning. The afternoon sun pushed through the clouds, casting a hazy glow over the tarmac. The kind of light that made everything seem still for a moment, until the next arrival roared in overhead, rattling the sky and shaking the ground. Flight 2704 from Chicago had just landed, and the crew rushed to unload the luggage. Luke worked steadily, keeping his focus tight, muscles aching but mind sharp. He moved with a kind of quiet discipline that came from years of understanding consequences, both mechanical and human. He didn't need to prove himself, he just needed to be needed. But Carl Jennings had other plans. "Yo, rookie!" Carl barked from the far side of the belt loader. "Mind grabbing the oversized container by cart 9, the one marked Live Animals?" Luke hesitated. Oversized crates weren't usually touched without two-man verification, but he didn't want another scene, not after what happened earlier. He nodded and jogged toward the container. It looked ordinary enough, heavy-duty plastic, vented sides, standard airline tags. But when he leaned down to grip the base and test the weight, something felt off. Much heavier than expected. Luke braced his legs and gave it a small nudge. It didn't budge. He scanned the tag again. Weight declared 93 pounds. This crate was at least twice that. Something wasn't right. He waved over a younger handler, Mason, barely out of high school. "Hey, can you help me lift this? It's supposed to be under 100. Mason nodded and crouched. Together they counted. 1, 2, 3. They lifted, and Mason immediately staggered. "Whoa!" he gasped. "That's gotta be like 200 pounds. What's in here, a lion?" Luke felt the shift in balance as they moved it. It wasn't just heavy, it was unstable. Something inside rolled unevenly, and that's when it clicked. The container wasn't sealed. Luke gently set it down and tapped the side. No animal sounds, no movement. "I'm gonna open this," he said carefully, pulling a small multi-tool from his belt. Mason's eyes widened. "You sure that's okay?" "Better safe than grounded," Luke replied. He loosened the screws on the side latches. When the final bolt popped loose, the lid creaked open, and both men stepped back. Inside wasn't an animal crate. It was filled with metal parts, loose gears, brackets, scraps of engine casing, maybe old maintenance junk from a broken tow tractor, but they weren't secured, just dumped in like trash. Luke's stomach sank. If this had been loaded on a flight, a shift in cargo could have thrown off the center of gravity mid-air. He stood up slowly. The crate had clearly been mislabeled, but by accident or on purpose. "Who tagged this?" Luke asked aloud, though he already had a sinking suspicion. Mason shrugged. "Carl told me to bring it from the back bay this morning, said it was urgent." Luke's jaw clenched. His hands, steady even in war zones, trembled slightly. This wasn't just hazing anymore, this was sabotage. He picked up the tag and studied the initials. The ID matched Carl's. There it was, right in ink. "Get a supervisor," Luke said. But before Mason could move, Carl appeared from behind a stack of containers, arms folded, smirk barely hidden. "Problem, boys?" he asked, all fake concern. Luke turned, holding the crate tag in one hand and the open lid in the other. "You mislabeled a 200-pound metal load as live cargo," Luke said quietly, "and you told me to lift it. Alone." Carl shrugged. "Must have been a mix-up." Luke stepped forward. "A mix-up that could have tipped an aircraft." Carl's smile didn't waver, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. "You're reaching, rookie." "No," Luke replied, voice low and steady. "I'm remembering." And in that moment, it was like the years peeled back, Luke standing in a control room, reviewing torque settings and thermal tolerances. Precision, protocol, safety above pride. That was what mattered. A whistle cut through the tension as a supervisor approached, clipboard in hand. "What's going on here?" Luke spoke calmly. "We found a mislabeled crate, oversized, overweight, improper contents assigned by this man." He held up the tag, "and nearly loaded without inspection." The supervisor took the tag and frowned. Carl tried to interject, but she silenced him with a raised hand. "I'll handle this," she said. "Both of you, come with me." Luke followed, heart steady. He had faced worse, but this time, he wasn't protecting a company or a title. He was protecting people. And now, someone was finally watching. The airport cafeteria wasn't glamorous, more like a gray bunker with vending machines, scuffed tables, and the scent of burnt coffee clinging to every corner. But for Rosa Alvarez, it was a place where the truth often surfaced. People let their guard down when they were chewing. She sat at her usual table by the window, which overlooked the loading bay, a spot she liked because it let her watch the world move, even while standing still. Today, however, she wasn't watching the sky. She was watching Luke. He entered slowly, carrying a tray with a plastic-wrapped sandwich and a water bottle. His steps were heavier than usual, as if his boots had soaked up more than just the morning shift. Rosa waved him over. "You look like a man carrying more than luggage," she said. Luke sat down with a quiet sigh. "You ever feel like someone's trying to erase you, one mistake at a time?" Rosa didn't answer right away. She let the silence hang, like the pause before a confession. "I found something," Luke said. "This morning. A crate Carl said was animal cargo, but it wasn't. It was metal scrap, overweight, unsecured." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "That's no accident." "I don't think it is." "Did you tell anyone?" "I reported it. Supervisor took our statements, but I don't know what good it'll do. He's been here longer than most of the walls." Rosa leaned forward. "You ever hear of the name Carl Jennings in the maintenance scandal from '05? Baggage crew was caught cutting corners on inspection tags. One guy was suspended but never charged." Luke looked up. "You think that was him?" "I'd bet my pension." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small notebook. It was worn. The edges curled like the pages had been turned in worry more than once. "I keep notes," she said. "People think I clean floors. I do, but I also clean up stories people try to hide." Luke gave a small, surprised smile. "You always this curious?" "I'm old, not dead," she replied, deadpan, then softer. "When you've seen as much loss as we have, you stop trusting luck. You start trusting patterns." Luke took a bite of his sandwich. It tasted like cardboard and resignation. "I didn't come here to dig up skeletons," he said. "I just needed work. After the layoffs, I thought I could handle a quiet job. No more responsibility, no more people counting on me." Rosa watched him carefully. "But you're not built for quiet." He chuckled. "No, guess not." They sat a moment longer, listening to the distant crackle of radios and the murmur of shift workers passing through. Rosa's eyes sharpened. "Do you know why I remembered your name?" Luke shook his head. "That day with the LAX flight, the near disaster, you were the one who flagged the fatigue crack. Management buried your name in the footnotes, but my cousin worked internal compliance. She told me, said you saved them from a lawsuit the size of a 747. Luke looked down at his tray, picking at the crust of his sandwich. "I didn't want recognition," he said. "I just wanted things to work the way they were supposed to." "And they did," Rosa said, "because of you." Luke met her gaze. There was no pity in her eyes, only truth. And that somehow was heavier than all the crates he'd lifted today. Rosa slid her notebook across the table. "Take it, read it. There's more than you know about Carl. I've seen him falsify maintenance logs, pressure new hires to skip checks. One guy quit on his third day." Luke hesitated. "You want me to take him down?" I want you to do what you always do. Fix what others ignore. He nodded slowly. I'll read it. Just then, a call crackled over the cafeteria intercom. Luke Thompson, please report to Hangar 3, supervisor's office. They both froze. You think they're firing you? Rosa asked, her voice quiet but steady. If they are, Luke said, standing, then I'll leave with my spine straight. Rosa smiled. That's the only way to walk out of anywhere. Luke left the cafeteria with the notebook tucked under his arm and a fire reigniting in his chest. Some men retire quietly, others are forced to roar one last time. The walk to Hangar 3 felt longer than it should have. Luke moved through the narrow passageways with the quiet intensity of someone who had walked into boardrooms, cockpit inspections, and funeral homes, and had left each one changed. Inside the supervisor's office, the air conditioner hummed faintly above a stack of file folders. The room was sterile, but not cold. A thin beam of afternoon light cut through the blinds, landing on a desk where Supervisor Dana McCready sat. Late 40s, firm but fair. She wore her authority like a well-tailored suit, without apology. Luke stood quietly, hands behind his back. Sit down, Mr. Thompson, she said, her tone unreadable. He obeyed, posture straight. No fear, just readiness. Dana opened a folder and looked down. Tell me again what you found in that crate. Luke repeated the details. Mislabeled cargo, overweight, assigned by Carl Jennings, nearly placed on a commercial flight without proper clearance. He recited it like a report, methodical, clear. She listened without interrupting, then pushed the file forward. Inside were printed images from the tarmac security cameras. One clearly showed Carl lifting the crate's tag from a storage bin. Another, grainy but damning, showed him placing the tag on the wrong container. Luke blinked. He hadn't expected this level of documentation. You weren't the only one who reported him, Dana said. Maintenance has had concerns about Jennings for a while, but we needed something solid. You have it now, Luke said. Yes, she replied, and thanks to you, we also have a pattern. Rosa Alvarez submitted a series of notes and timestamps tracking inconsistencies in his logs. She's thorough. Luke smiled for the first time in hours. She's a force of nature. Dana leaned back. So are you. That caught him off guard. She reached into a separate drawer and slid out another folder, this one thinner but older. Do you recognize this? She asked, opening it. Inside was a scanned copy of the 2009 incident file, the emergency landing at LAX, Luke's engineering notes, his flagged inspection reports, his recommendation to ground the aircraft, and beneath it all, his name. I read this last night after Rosa mentioned it, Dana said. And I have one question. Luke braced himself. Why are you loading luggage? The words hit harder than any insult Carl had thrown. I lost the taste for the cockpit, he said quietly. And for the politics that come with it, Dana nodded. Still, this airport needs people who care about safety more than they care about climbing ladders. Luke remained silent. Then Dana said something he didn't expect. I want to move you into oversight training, cargo compliance. You'd be mentoring the next generation of handlers, helping us avoid more Jennings situations. Luke blinked. That's generous. It's not generosity, she said. It's strategy. He smiled softly. Let me think on it. She nodded. Take your time, but know this. What you did today, it probably saved lives. Luke stood to leave, but before he reached the door, Dana added one more thing. Oh, and Carl, he's been suspended pending a formal review. You'll get a statement to sign. HR is involved. Luke nodded. Good. He's smart, just angry at the wrong things. Outside, the air felt different, like pressure had lifted, but there was no celebration in his steps, only reflection He returned to the break area, where Rosa was wiping down tables with a rag that had seen more secrets than soap. "You're still standing," she said, barely looking up. "They offered me a new role," Luke replied. Rosa raised an eyebrow. "And? I'm thinking about it." She tossed the rag into the bin and faced him squarely. "Some men carry boxes, others carry purpose. You were never made for boxes." Luke gave her a small nod. "Neither were you." She smiled, then reached into her cart and handed him a folded sheet of paper. "One more thing." He opened it. It was a copy of an internal complaint filed in 2005 against Carl Jennings. Falsified inspections. The investigation had been dropped. No explanation. "I knew his face looked familiar," Luke said. "Patterns," Rosa replied. "They don't lie." Luke folded the paper carefully and tucked it into his chest pocket. Back on the ramp, baggage carts rolled. Radios crackled. Life went on. But something had changed. The quiet man in the orange vest was no longer invisible, and someone else was about to feel the weight of consequences. The maintenance hall echoed with the low hum of fluorescent lights, the occasional clang of metal on concrete, and the murmured gossip of employees who sensed something was about to happen. Word had spread fast, too fast. Carl Jennings was waiting by the employee lockers, arms crossed, trying to look casual. But his jaw was tight, and his eyes kept darting toward the supervisor's office. Luke walked in with steady steps, clipboard in hand, vest zipped tight. His expression unreadable, almost calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm breaks. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The air was already heavy with expectation. Dana McCready stepped out of her office, followed by two men in aviation compliance uniforms and a woman from HR. Serious faces, no laughter, no hesitation. "Carl Jennings," Dana said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We need to speak with you now." Carl stiffened. "About what?" "You know what this is about." Whispers rippled through the room. People stopped mid-task, pretending to work while watching from the corners of their eyes. Carl forced a chuckle. "This some kind of rookie revenge plan? You're really gonna take his word over mine?" "No," Dana said. "We're taking the word of video evidence, of load records, of inspection logs, and the testimony of 3 separate employees who saw you mislabel cargo." Carl's face flushed. He glanced at Luke. "You set me up." "No," Luke replied quietly. "You set yourself up. I just refused to look away." One of the compliance officers stepped forward and handed Carl a printed report. He snatched it, eyes skimming the top line, then the color drained from his face. He knew. He had been caught. "Listen," Carl began, voice suddenly smaller. "That crate thing, it wasn't supposed to get loaded. I was just messing with him. A joke." "A joke," Dana repeated, cold and sharp. 200 pounds of unsecured metal in a container marked for live animals. "You think that's a joke?" "I wasn't gonna—" "You could have caused a fatal incident," the HR woman cut in, "and you've shown a pattern of negligence. This isn't about one mistake, Carl. This is about endangering lives." Carl's shoulders dropped. Years of arrogance crumbling under the weight of exposure. The room was silent. Then Carl turned to Luke, eyes narrow. "You think you're better than me?" Luke didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was calm, but it cut deeper than any shout. "I think I remembered what you forgot." "And what's that?" "That airports aren't built on pride. They're built on trust." Carl stared at him, chest heaving, and for a moment it seemed he might swing. But then, as if all the fight drained out of him, he just muttered something under his breath and followed the compliance team into the office. Doors closed. The silence that remained felt sacred. Luke stood still, unsure what to do next, until a slow, deliberate applause broke the tension. Rosa. She was standing near the cleaning supply closet, clapping once, then again. Not mockery, just respect. Others joined. Not loud, not theatrical, just hands meeting palms in quiet gratitude. Luke didn't smile. He simply nodded once, then walked out into the afternoon light, heart pounding with something he hadn't felt in years: vindication. Outside, the sky was opening up. Planes rose one after another, silver arrows slicing through clouds. The world kept moving. But for the first time in a long while, Luke didn't feel like he was chasing it. He was part of it. And someone was finally listening. For the first time in weeks, the loading bay felt still. Not quiet. Airports were never truly quiet, but the usual tension had dissolved, like everyone was breathing easier now that a storm had passed. Luke stood beside a row of freshly aligned carts, clipboard in hand, checking tags with the same precision he had once applied to structural assessments at 35,000 feet. It wasn't about the luggage. It was about what it represented: weight, balance, responsibility. Behind him, the door to the supervisor's office swung open. Carl Jennings stepped out. Gone was the smug swagger. The man who once barked orders and belittled others now looked smaller. His shoulders slumped, his ID badge already missing. A temporary suspension, they said, pending final review. But Carl knew what that really meant. Luke turned as Carl approached. There was a long pause. Neither man spoke. Then, finally, Carl broke the silence. "So that's it," he muttered. "They pulled me off the rotation, said they're digging into old logs. Probably gonna let me go." Luke didn't answer. Carl laughed dryly. "Guess I should have seen it coming, should have kept my mouth shut." "You should have done your job," Luke said quietly. Carl winced at the truth. There was a silence between them, but it wasn't the silence of war. It was the silence of aftermath. Carl looked at the ground. "I wasn't always like this, you know." Luke said nothing. Used to care, used to show up early, train guys the right way, then people stopped listening, got younger, faster, smarter, and I got bitter, thought maybe if I barked loud enough I'd still matter. Luke looked at him carefully. "You still could have chosen better," he said. Carl nodded. Yeah, I know." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a crumpled photo. A young boy, maybe 10, sitting on a baggage cart with a huge grin. "My grandson," Carl said, "comes to visit once a year. Always tells his friends his grandpa helps the planes fly. I liked that. Made me feel worth something." Luke stared at the photo, then at Carl. "Being worth something doesn't mean being feared," he said. "It means being remembered for the right reasons." Carl swallowed hard, folding the photo again, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," he said, almost too soft to hear. Luke nodded. That was enough. Not for trust to be rebuilt, not yet, but for the cycle to break. Just then, Dana approached from across the lot, flanked by Rosa and 2 younger handlers. Her stride was purposeful, but her eyes kind. "Luke," she called, "can I speak to you a moment?" He turned to Carl. "Take care of yourself." Then he walked toward her. Dana handed him a fresh name badge. "Supervisor Assistant, Cargo Operations," it read. A promotion. Not flashy, but meaningful. "You've earned it," she said. "You'll train the new guys, build the right habits. You'll be the one they remember." Luke looked at the badge, then at the crew gathering near the carts. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "Let's get to work," he said. As the crew started loading the next flight, Rosa leaned close and whispered, "Full circle, huh?" Luke nodded. "And this time, we stay level." High above, a plane lifted into the sky, its nose angled toward the sun, balanced, sure, rising, just like him. The next morning, the airport looked the same gray concrete, the same sky streaked with vapor trails, the same buzz of announcements echoing off steel beams. But something had changed. Luke stood by the operations terminal, now wearing a different vest, navy blue, with a patch that read, "Training Lead, Cargo Oversight." It wasn't flashy, but for him, it meant something deeper. Trust reborn. He watched as a group of fresh hires gathered for orientation. Young faces, nervous hands, some eager, some skeptical, all watching him. He began without a script. "My name is Luke Thompson. Some of you might think this job is about lifting bags. It's not. It's about lifting people, making sure that every family, every soldier, every elderly traveler makes it safely to where they're going." They listened, really listened. "You'll work hard, you'll sweat, but if you do it right, no one will ever know your name. And that's the beauty of it, invisible safety." He paused, then added, "But when something doesn't feel right, you speak, you act. You don't wait for permission to protect someone's life." One of the trainees, a young woman named Danny, raised her hand. "Sir, were you the guy who caught the mislabeled crate?" Luke didn't smile. "I was one of the people who refused to ignore it." Rosa watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, beaming with the quiet pride of a mother hen watching her chicks find their footing. Later, she approached Luke with a tray of cafeteria coffee and a sly grin. "Still think you came here for a quiet job?" Luke chuckled. "I came here to survive. Turns out I was needed." As the day moved on, he shadowed the new crew on the tarmac, correcting posture, explaining center of gravity, showing how to read load tags like a surgeon reading vitals. No ego, just purpose. Meanwhile, in the employee lounge, Carl sat alone. He hadn't been officially terminated, not yet, but everyone knew the writing on the wall. He wasn't shouting anymore, wasn't mocking, just sitting, watching, remembering. He held the photo of his grandson again. Luke passed by the doorway, pausing just long enough for their eyes to meet. Carl didn't speak, he just nodded, grateful maybe, or ashamed. Maybe both. Luke nodded back. Redemption didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. Back outside, as the sun began to set, Luke stood near the edge of the tarmac, watching a departing flight rise into the clouds. He thought of his late wife, of the home he'd sold, the title he'd lost, and the quiet strength it took to start again. He thought of Rosa, of Danny, of the rookie who now asked questions instead of hiding her doubts. And he thought of Carl, not with hate, but with understanding. Everyone was carrying something, and now Luke was helping them carry it better. It was a quiet Thursday morning when the envelope arrived. Thick, cream-colored, embossed with the logo of the Federal Aviation Administration. Luke found it sitting atop the crew's mail tray, wedged between duty rosters and a forgotten sandwich coupon. He almost left it there, but curiosity got the better of him. He slipped it into his jacket pocket and carried it through the day like a stone against his chest. Not until the last flight was loaded, the sun dipping low behind the terminal glass, did he finally open it. Alone, sitting on a metal bench facing runway 6, the letter was short, formal, but respectful. "Mr. Thompson, we have recently become aware of your involvement in preventing a near-fatal cargo incident at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. Your prior record with Delta's engineering division and your role in the 2009 structural prevention case were noted by several parties in recent internal discussions. We would like to formally invite you to return as a senior aviation safety consultant. The role would involve reviewing cargo procedures, training compliance officers, and contributing to national safety policy. We believe your insight is not only valuable, but rare. Please contact us if you are interested. Sincerely, Douglas Rennings, FAA Division of Cargo Safety. Luke read it twice, then a third time. The irony was thick. For years he'd longed for recognition, for a second chance at the cockpit-adjacent life he once knew. Now that it had come, he wasn't sure he wanted it. He folded the letter slowly and tucked it back into the envelope. Later that evening, he found Rosa wiping down tables in the break room. She looked up and instantly read his face. "What's wrong?" "They offered me a consulting job," Luke said. "With the FAA, training safety officers, writing policy." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that what you used to dream about?" "Used to," Luke said quietly. She sat down across from him. "So why don't you look happy?" He hesitated. "Because here, I see the difference I make. Not on paper, in people, in hands that now double-check tags because they saw me do it first, in kids like Danny asking hard questions, in Carl, sitting with his mouth shut for once, maybe thinking about more than just himself." Rosa nodded slowly. "Then you've already answered your question." "But what if I'm wasting the opportunity?" Luke asked. "You're not," she replied. "You're planting something no government file ever will. You're teaching integrity by example. That sticks longer than a regulation." Luke exhaled deeply. The weight on his shoulders didn't disappear, but it shifted, balanced itself like cargo in a well-packed plane. The next morning, he returned to the supervisor's office, letter in hand. Dana looked up from her computer. "Big decision." He nodded. "Tell them thank you." But no. Her brow lifted in surprise. "I belong here," he added, "on the floor, with people. This is where I make a difference." Dana smiled. "That's the kind of decision that changes systems more than any policy ever will." He stepped back onto the tarmac as a new flight landed, wind sweeping past him like applause. Luke didn't need a title to feel proud anymore. He had something better, a name people trusted. The air on the tarmac that morning was unusually crisp for June. Planes taxied in slow choreography, their engines humming like distant thunder. Another day, another wave of stories arriving and departing. And among them, Luke Thompson stood in his vest, clipboard in hand, exactly where he was meant to be. He was guiding a trainee through a cargo check when he noticed someone near the fence. An older man, alone, head lowered. Luke squinted. The stance was familiar. It was Carl, no vest, no badge, just a plain jacket and the nervous shuffle of someone unsure if they belonged anymore. Luke excused himself from the crew and walked over slowly. Carl turned at the sound of his boots. "Didn't think they'd let me back this close," he muttered. "They probably wouldn't," Luke replied. Carl nodded. I just wanted to see it one more time, the work, the people, you." Luke waited, letting the silence fill the space between them. "They let me go last week," Carl said. "No appeal. Said my file was unrecoverable." He paused. "I earned that." Luke said nothing. Carl reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a folded card. He handed it over. Luke opened it. A simple, handwritten note. "For your patience, your strength, and your decency. I forgot what those things looked like until I saw you carry them every day." Luke looked up. "I came to say thank you," Carl said. "And I'm sorry. Not just for the crate, for all of it." The wind moved gently between them. "I forgive you," Luke said. Carl's eyes welled up, but he didn't let the tears fall. He just nodded and turned to leave. Before he did, Luke called out, "You should visit your grandson more." Carl stopped. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I should." And then he was gone. That afternoon, Luke gathered his team for a safety drill. They laughed, they learned, they worked as one. Rosa watched from the edge of the lot, sipping coffee, eyes proud. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the runway, Luke looked up and saw a 737 lifting into the sky. It shimmered in the light like a promise. He thought of his late wife. He thought of the engineer he used to be and the man he had become. And in that moment he understood, you don't have to fly to rise, you just have to lift others while you stay grounded. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated or had to start over later in life? Share your story. We'd love to hear it. And if you'd like to help us keep telling stories like this, you can support the channel through a super thanks. It makes a huge difference. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and watch the video on your screen right now. It's another powerful airport story that just might change the way you see the world.